I have the pleasure tonight of not only serving on the advisory board of the Opportunity Coalition, but introducing our founder, Brian Watson. Brian Watson's never-ending efforts to bring together the community, businesses, business owners, and bring us the best speakers in Colorado is innovative at the least. Brian?
Well, welcome to the Opportunity Coalition. Before I get started with introductions, one thing that we always do here, I got to try to figure out how to clip this on my jacket. That's good? Good. One thing that we always do here is to have you put your business card in the little container up there, and Christina's going to bring those up here in a second. And we're going to pick a card out and have someone in the room, whoever that is, to talk for 1 minute, just 1 minute, about their company or what they do. If you don't want to be called upon, give me this sign. Okay, let's all practice it. Make sure nobody understands it. Okay. And give me that sign, and we'll pick somebody else. But it's going to be 1 minute, and I've got a little trusty bell here that I'm going to keep you honest, because I know there's some people in the room who might want to talk a little more than 1 minute about their company or themselves. We got to be honest here. So with that, why don't I hold it and you pick? We have Jeff Collar with Chuck Latham Associates. Jeff, let's welcome Jeff to the front. This thing is really a nightmare. Not
Okay.
gonna lie.
1 minute. So I'm actually the CFO for Chuck Latham Associates, also for a family foundation. So I'll give you a 1 minute on that. A family by the name of the Klauses. You may have heard of the company VRBO, Vacation Rentals by Owner. They made a small fortune in that. Basically, when they sold the business, they put most of the money into a family foundation. And I'm just helping them basically invest the money and so that they can give the money away. So that's what I do.
Great. Thanks for being here. Now you got to be careful in a group like this when you say you're trying to help invest money. We have a security detail, Jeff. We'll take care of you. Don't worry at the end. Well, welcome to the Opportunity Coalition. For those that haven't been here, a lot of people ask, well, why did you found this organization? And I come from a small community on the western slope of Colorado, and I noticed that our state was somewhat disconnected between the western slope, the Front Range, the Mountain Range, and the Eastern Plains. And I was fortunate in knowing a lot of good people. And I thought, you know what? These people have some words of wisdom to share. Some words of wisdom that can help impact people in a positive way. And so we acquired this building that you're in right now from a lender. And the Innovation Pavilion is here on the first floor. If you don't know about the Innovation Pavilion, it's a business incubator. Youngest entrepreneur is in Media. It's good to see you, by the way. Media is the one that you want to talk to about the Innovation Pavilion, or Vic if he's around. But the youngest entrepreneur is in middle school, and the oldest is in their 80s, and everything in between. And over 80 companies have been founded here at this location. And you think about the ripple effect within our community, it's very, very powerful. Before I get started with my talks, though, I want to thank a few people. First, Ashley for putting all the food and drinks together. Thank you, Ashley, for doing that. I want to thank our advisory board, who is here, the members that are here. Kyle Henderson, Kyle, right there. Luke Wyckoff, Millie Kitchen, Christina Whalen, who just did the introduction, Nicole Gamp, Sue Kenfield, and John Brackney. Did I miss anybody at all? Let's give them a round of applause. So, at the Opportunity Coalition, we focus on a few simple things. We believe in free enterprise. We believe in the power of the individual to go out and make a difference. And we believe that when you connect good people together, great things happen. And so we thank each of you for being here tonight, because I know you have options to be other places, but you chose to be here. Tonight, we're honored to have Linda Childears with us, who is the president and CEO of the Daniels Fund. In my talk, about a few comments I'd like to share about Bill Daniels. Did anyone in this room get the opportunity to ever meet Bill Daniels in his lifetime? He's a very interesting man. He embodies what it means to be a successful entrepreneur. And when I say successful, I don't mean just in the monetary sense, but also for his contribution to our community and our country, and frankly, our world. Let me share a few bullet points about Bill Daniels with you. He was born in Greeley, just up the road, in 1920. He was an undefeated Golden Gloves champion in New Mexico. He was a naval fighter pilot in World War II and the Korean conflict, who retired as a full commander in the U.S. Navy. He started his first cable business in Casper, Wyoming in 1953. Think about cable in 1953. Pretty cutting edge. He's the founder of Daniels and Associates. He helped found Centacor, a nonprofit rehab center for drug addicts, alcoholics, people with criminal behavior problems. A billionaire who helped make the Denver the cable capital of the world. And each of us is benefiting from that to this day, because we are also one of the high-tech areas of the country, and we have the talent, partly from him starting it. He donated his home, cable land, to the city and county of Denver so that future mayors could reside there. He established Young Americans Bank, which teaches financial literacy for children under 21 years of age. For those of you that don't know, half of your ticket cost for the Opportunity Coalition goes to a nonprofit. Our first donation at the Opportunity Coalition was to Young Americans Bank, because they are promoting entrepreneurship for future generations. I don't know if anybody just whistled at me or if that was a phone. I'm going to go with whistled at me. But thank you for that. Bill donated millions of dollars to DU to establish the Daniels College of Business. He's the creator of the Daniels Fund, and upon his passing, bequeathed, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for, $1 billion to start that. Bill was an alcoholic. Why did I stop on that last point? Well, I think it shows the human side of Bill Daniels. We often think of the billionaire and all of these other accomplishments. But Bill had his own struggles. He once said, "I am for the underdog, for those in ill health, the homeless, the hungry, for guys who need a second chance." How many of you in this room have ever needed a second chance? Now, I know we have a lot of high performers in here, and my guess is everybody's always scored 100% on every test and always been successful in every single business that they've ever founded, right? So let's raise our hands a little bit higher for those second chance people like myself. Much better. We'll have a big hug afterwards. But I wanted to point that out, a second chance. You know, as entrepreneurs, it is very, very tough. And to have the second chance where somebody believes in you, where you believe in yourself, to be able to pick yourself up and to start anew. It's one of the great things about the American society. We believe in the individual. It's not so much where you came from, but what you're going to do and where you're going. In a book about Bill, in chapter 24, is a chapter entitled "In Bill's Own Words." And I'd like to share 4 points that he shared in this book. And these are words directly from him. The first is live a life of meaning. When you put your life in perspective, you realize how little time there is to make something truly significant out of it. To some people, this might mean acquiring a lot of possessions. To others, building a business or owning property. And there are those whose lives won't be fulfilled unless they achieve fame and fortune. There's nothing wrong with any of these aspirations, but for me, they pale in comparison to individuals who want to leave something more consequential as their legacy. Let that one soak in a little bit. The second one is entitled Give. Imagine a world where people give of themselves simply because they want to, not out of a sense of debt or because they want something in return. No ulterior motives, no feelings of guilt, just the desire to give for the sake of giving. Now, instead of imagining this kind of world, do your part in making it happen. Make a charitable donation. Volunteer your time to improve your community. Give back to the world that gives so much to you. And if it happens to make you feel good to give, that's all right. Feeling good is the one ulterior motive that's acceptable. The third one, and by the way, there's a lot of them, so I recommend you get the book. They're pretty powerful. Believe in yourself. It has made millionaires of paupers. It has earned the Nobel Prize, and by using it wisely, entrepreneurs have ended up running corporations. I'm referring to believing in yourself and your ideas, taking a chance on your own merit and giving the world your best shot. Somebody once said, observe the turtle. He progresses only with his neck out. I think the same holds true for us two-legged creatures. If you've never taken a chance on yourself, at least think about it. Unless you do, you may never know what you're missing out on, and neither will the rest of the world. And the last one that I'll share with you. Understand the secrets of success. I was often asked what I thought were the secrets to success. Here they are in a nutshell. Number one, contacts, contacts, contacts. Know everyone and something about them, including the names of their family members. Number two, be visible and get involved in your trade association and leadership organizations. Number three, always maintain integrity. And number four, perform, perform, perform. Pretty simple, huh? If you do those four things, you will have the world by the ass. And yes, we can say ass at the Opportunity Coalition. Had to throw it out there. That's what he said. I'm just reading what he said. Good thing it stopped there, right, Linda? Knowing Bill, it could have went a little bit further. But we're going to stop there. So with that, I'm honored to introduce to you tonight my friend Linda Childears, President and CEO of the Daniels Fund. She joined the Daniels Fund in July 2005. Prior to her position at the Daniels Fund, Linda served as President and CEO of Young Americans Bank since its inception in 1987. She worked alongside Bill Daniels to plan, organize, and launch the state-chartered FDIC-insured bank, which offers hands-on experience with real banking services exclusively to young people. Just before this get-together, she was sharing some of the success stories of these kids, and they're very, very powerful, and she may get into that this evening. Linda serves on the boards of Cheyenne Capital Fund, Colorado Association of Funders, Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and Conference of Southwest Foundations. She is a member of the Colorado Ethics and Business Alliance Leadership Council and Mayor Hancock's Denver Education Impact. In sum, Linda is involved in her community, and she's a great leader of the Daniels Fund. Help me welcome her to the front. I don't know if you want to say.
Okay, so the deal is you hold it or you pin it on or
You
something?
pin it on.
Okay,
Good luck.
great. Well, let me see if I can pin it on here. Well, it is such a pleasure to be with you here tonight, and I was interested when Brian asked who all knew Bill Daniels to see how many of you had met the amazing man that I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about. But before I do that, I want to introduce two of my colleagues who are here tonight. Dale Bradley, who's going to share a couple of photos. We are not doing a PowerPoint, but we have a couple of Billisms that we think you'll like. And Debbie Pierce, who's back by the registration. Debbie and Dale both have over 20 years of working in the communications areas in one of Bill Daniels' companies. So between the three of us, I think we've got about 75 years of working with Bill. So they were interested in coming tonight and hearing the presentation. My background, let me tell you a little bit about how I got to know this amazing man and how I got into this business that I would have never sought out to be in, honestly. I met Bill Daniels in 1987 when he wanted to start Young Americans Bank. Now, I'm a recovering banker by training and had spent time in both large and small banks. And in the 80s, things weren't quite beautiful here in Denver. And I started my own company at that time to work with banks who were either with investors who wanted to start new banks or banks who were in regulatory problems of one sort or another. Suffice it to say, the business was mostly banks who were in trouble. But along came this guy named Bill Daniels, who was working with the state of Colorado saying, I want a bank for kids. And they're going, yeah, right, buddy, sure. Do you understand how regulated banking is? Do you understand how hard this is going to be? And long story short, 2.5 years later, the bank commissioner said, get somebody who knows what they're doing to get this thing open. So they called me, and I met with Bill, and he said, do you know what I'm trying to do? I didn't know Bill Daniels. I said, well, I read it in the paper. And he said, so what do you think? I said, well, it's going to be kind of hard to make money on a bank for kids. And he was so offended, you cannot believe it. He said, what makes you think I am trying to make money off of kids? And I said, well, pardon me, but I've never really met anybody who wanted to start a bank that would probably require capital injections forever. And he said, well, you have now. So we talked for a while longer, and Bill said, can you help me or not? And I said, well, why don't you tell me a little more about where you are in the application process, and we'll give you a proposal. And in Bill's colorful language, he said, I don't want a proposal. Can you help me or not? And I said, sure. And he said, what's it going to cost? And I said, a lot. He said, you're hired. So that's how I got to know Bill early on. You got a glimpse of him in that early stage, and at that point I was a consultant. I was just trying to help them get the charter. And I thought he was a little crazy, to be honest with you. And over a couple of months' time, as his vision for helping young people understand the power of our free enterprise system and how they can be part of that really captured my imagination as well. I'm going to excuse my throat, it's very dry. So there are so many examples of things as we put the bank together that really tell kind of who Bill was that I think were kind of interesting stories. The second birthday party, and Bill loved to celebrate. We had big events for everything. Second birthday party, our youth advisory board had found a former gang member, pardon me, who had gone straight and was helping young people stay out of gangs. The youth advisory board said, we want to honor this person at the birthday party. 1986, or 88 that was, and we didn't have many gang issues in Denver. We didn't know anything about them. I'm coming out of the banking world where security is extremely important. And I explained to the kids that I didn't think that was a great idea because if it drew the wrong crowd to this birthday party that was going to have thousands of little kids there, it would be tragic. They understood. So about 2 weeks later, I get a call from Bill. He said, I understand we're going to honor a former Crips gang leader at the birthday party. And I said, no, we're not. And I explained to Bill that I was concerned about the primary objective was media attention, and the secondary objective was fun for kids, and there are going to be thousands of kids there. He says, to the second chance point, I kind of liked it. And I said, well, I kind of like it too, but I just don't think this is the right venue for it. Bill says, I kind of liked it a lot. And so I explained that it was not something I was going to take the responsibility for with the security of all these kids and everything else. So he folds his arms, pushes back his chair, and he says, I really liked it a lot. And I said, are you telling me to do it? Because I'm not going to do it. And Bill said, what do you mean you're not going to do it? And I said, I feel that strongly about it. I don't think it's the right place and the right time. I don't think many people told Bill things like that in his life, because he really didn't know what quite to say next. And he sat there for a while, and he said, well, can we do it another time? I said, we can do it any other time, whatever you need. But that was an example of the second chance kind of thing with him. When we started working on his estate planning, so Bill Daniels was the sole shareholder of the bank, so he injected capital every year because of the losses. So as we do his estate planning, he says, well, the Daniels Fund can own the stock to the bank. I said, no, that won't work. That makes the Daniels Fund a bank holding company. That's not a compatible combination. Well, what are we going to do? So we create a companion nonprofit, Young Americans Education Foundation, so that Daniels Fund can make a grant to a 501c3 who can have a wholly owned subsidiary and have capital injections. Sounds pretty reasonable. You cannot imagine what that took from a regulatory standpoint to get that done. So I called Bill the day we were sending the applications out, and the application had to be in Kansas City, Dallas, Washington, D.C., and Denver on the same day, different regulators. And I said, I've done everything I can think of to grease the way for this. So the applications, except for deliver it in person, and the applications go in he says, what'd you say? And I said, you don't deliver applications in person to the Federal Reserve Board and the FDIC. And he said, why not? I said, well, they're kind of like the IRS. They're kind of faceless people. They don't want to do that. Bill says, call them and ask them if you can deliver it in person. I'll call the pilot. 20 minutes later, we were heading to Washington, D.C., where we dropped off these applications. So that was the way he thought about things when he wanted to get them done. Another story back in the bank days, student loans. So as we did the forecast for the bank, I'm thinking, what are we going to have, hamster cages and prom loans or, whatever. Maybe we could have student loans. Seemed like a natural fit. So we go out and hire the best person we can find to build student loans, and we built them immediately. And somebody says to me, how do you get around the 50-50 rule? And I said, I do not know what the 50-50 rule is. Well, it wasn't a bank regulation. It was a Department of Ed reg that says for every dollar that you have in student loans, you must have at least that much in consumer loans. Well, in any other bank, you've got mortgages, you've got everything else that count. We had hamster loans. And so I called the bank commissioner and said, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. What do I do now? And he said, I don't have any idea. I never heard of it. So he checks it out and calls me back, and he says, it's fairly serious. If you don't correct this, they could shut the bank down. I said, got it. Sell the portfolio. So a couple days later, I'm talking to Bill on some other stuff, and I said, by the way, we're going to have to sell the student loan portfolio, and I explained the difference. And then in the banking world, for those of you who aren't in it, if you don't have the loans, you put the money out in investments. We're not talking about much money at all, probably more on the investment side. Bill says, I am disappointed in you. Not what you ever wanted to hear from Bill. And I said, well, I'm disappointed in myself too. It's just not anything I've ever had any experience with, but we have no choice. And he said, you are solving the wrong problem. I said, can you say a little more? What are we talking about here? So Bill says, change the law. Well, up to that point, we had received probably 15 unprecedented bank regulatory exceptions. So this was a piece of cake to him. This was why it was so much fun for me. I said, Bill, this one is the U.S. Congress. We are talking about the Reauthorization Act of the Higher Education Reauthorization Act. It is one line in a book the size of what used to be the Denver telephone book. He said, what is your point? So I got a call from his attorney that afternoon who said, I've been reassigned to you. We're going after a student loan exception, which 5 years later we got. Did we make another student loan? No. Did Bill care? No. What was his objective? He wanted me in Congress testifying about the importance of financial literacy for young people, which was the whole point of the bank. So that was how I got to know Bill. Brian gave you a pretty good sketch of some of the things that were unique about Bill. My father, growing up, was my absolute best friend and my mentor for sure, and he passed away in 1990. I started working for Bill in 1987. So Bill, at that point, our relationship had developed quite a bit through several of these things, and He was not only a mentor, but a good friend to me. So he decides that I need a new father. So he sort of takes on the role of being my father. Now, my father never did some of the things that Bill did, like check out the guys I would go out with. Bill would hire investigators to check them out and make sure they were okay. And when I met Don Childears, he was quite happy because Don was Republican and had worked on his campaign. So he was happy with that. But once we decided to get married, then Bill Daniels decided he was father of the bride, and Dale and Bill did the wedding planning, essentially, which turned out to be quite an ordeal. So, yeah, we had a great time. So as Bill, in the last years of his life, he was really focusing on putting his foundation together. And his good friend, Bob Magnus, passed away. I don't know many of you remember that, but Bob had not done as much planning as he could have done or should have done, and Bill didn't want that to happen to his estate. So he was really putting a fair amount of time and thought into what he wanted it to do. And in fact, we almost lost him about a year before it was finished, and his pastor said to him, I think you had unfinished work to do, and that's why you didn't go when you did. But Bill was very specific about what he wanted his foundation to do and not to do. And I was one of his estate trustees, so we were working on settling the estate and moving the money over to the foundation, as well as one of the original foundation trustees. And none of us had any experience with a billion-dollar startup that 2 days after he died, people expected to be dispersing money. It was the craziest time you can imagine. But the structure that Bill chose for his foundation was a private foundation, which means one donor. It was set up in perpetuity, which means we invest the money and we pay out 5% a year, or a little more or less than 5%. And he also wanted it to be very specific and geographically specific. Brian mentioned he was born in Greeley, Colorado. During the Depression, he moved to Iowa with his family, came back to Hobbs, where Mom and Dad started an insurance business. Then he went to Wyoming, and then in Utah. I'm going to tell you a little story about Utah a little bit later and why Utah was one of the important states to Bill. That wasn't the only specificity we had. He said 30% of the annual payout goes to the scholarship program. Scholarship program is an operating program for us, a very high-touch program because of the population that we work with. And then he said there are 10 funding areas that I want you to work in, which is a lot for a foundation to try and be expert in. So, 10 funding areas, all this money, how hard could this be, right? I think that's how Bill felt about it. But I tell you, we really messed up the first couple of years, and we messed it up pretty bad. And what we did, Phil Hogue had been tapped by Bill as the CEO, and Phil was a trusted colleague of Bill's and loved Bill Daniels. They were very close. Phil did, and the board was right there with him. We did what you're trained to do in business, which is, if you don't have expertise in something, hire the best person you can find. Make sense? That's what Phil did. Hired people that had very good experience in scholarship programs and in grants. And they did what? They hired the rest of the staff. Culture was born. And the culture could not have looked less like Bill Daniels if you had deliberately set out to do it. And I think three of us were on both board, estate trustees and board trustees, and we were really busy over here, and we're starting to hear from the community some things that are just not sounding right. So I think as a board, it took us about a year to wake up and say, boy, we have screwed up the most important thing he wanted us to do, which was honor his direction. So Phil had gotten quite ill about that time. He remained on the board until he passed away, but Hank Brown came in then as the CEO. And we started working very closely on looking at overhead. What were we doing in terms of how much money were we spending to put money out? And who were the people that we had making these judgments on the first level for the fund? We had 70 people on staff. We now have 38. We have more money now. We had offices in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah. We had lots of people working in those offices. They weren't giving away that much money, but we had people there. We now cover those states with a part-time person, and we're giving out more money there. But we spent a lot of time dealing with the overhead and the culture. The other thing then that Hank worked on, and I was chairing the grants committee at the time, is we spent about 2 years saying, what did Bill Daniels mean when he said, I want to fund programs for the aging? So we looked at all kinds of things. One of the projects that Dale is still managing, but we had, for some reason, Bill's assistants kept 55 years of his correspondence, and he wrote a lot. So we have scanned all of these into a system where we can pull out how did Bill Daniels feel about you name the topic. So we looked at a lot of these letters. We looked at his personal philanthropy. We interviewed his estate attorneys. We interviewed his colleagues, and we said, when he was talking about aging, what did he care about? And that was how we ended up defining the grant strategies that we have now. Hank was there for about 3 years, and then he went up to the University of Colorado, and the board said at that time, will you come over and finish this grant business and this focus on donor intent? And I said, I will if it's unanimous, and I will if we go in understanding that I will replace at least half of this staff as fast as I can, because they don't honor the donor. And the board's response was, why only half? So we were off and running at that point. So I have been there. I thought I'd be there a couple years. I've been there almost 10, which is astounding to me. But I think the areas that have been the focus for me, donor intent, donor intent, donor intent. I mean, the book that Brian mentioned in the packets that you have tells you how to download it. If you don't want to download it, give us a card and we'll mail you one. But the book has a lot of the letters that Bill wrote and a lot of the work that he did. We have done a series of videos, 6 legacy videos, that explain that for future boards. This is all being done for future boards and future staff who wouldn't know him. Our board now knew the man, and we all love the man, and we're all totally dedicated to doing this his way. And I think unanimously, if he were here today, we would counsel him against perpetuity, because the chance of it maintaining integrity, or not integrity, the chances of it maintaining consistency with his direction over time is probably very small. So, how are we doing? We started with $1 billion. We've given away $600 million, and we only have $1.4 billion left. So things have been pretty good. You want to put up the slide on the portfolio? Our portfolio is pretty well divided in a lot of different. I figure this audience might care about this. But the way it works in a foundation is that we set the policy, we set our target ranges, and then we hired a consultant. We work with Monticello, and they bring us deals that fit within what we have available and fit within those areas. During the 08-09 era, I think everybody was a little uncertain about what the future was going to hold, and we were probably more conservative. Well, we were more conservative than we wish we'd been, because we left some money on the table. But overall, our average return is 12%. So that works pretty good. That's been a low of 3% one year and a high of 24% one year, so it varies. The little section called opportunistic, the board wanted to keep some powder that they could do some fun things themselves. And an example of that was we participated in an auction it was about 2006, wireless spectrum. And AT&T didn't have the capital at the time to buy it, and people, were not sure what to do. And we said, we think cell phone usage is going to go up. So we put $4 billion in it, and 4 years later, sold it to AT&T for $169 billion. So that was the year we had the 24% return. So that one was pretty fun. So the scholarships, the scholarship program, if I spend a minute talking about that, we have 2 types of scholarships. We have the traditional Daniels Scholar, which is high school to a 4-year institution. We have awarded 3,226 scholarships since Bill passed away. 3,000 scholarships. Now they're able to go anywhere they want to go in the United States. They can pursue any degree they want, although if Bill were here, he would want them in business. Our selection process has tightened over the years, and what we've learned along the way, our scholars are all need-based. It's one of the criteria Bill set up. But what we've really focused on is we want the person who needs the money but doesn't have an entitlement attitude, who is going to work really hard to make the most of it. So there's a lot in the screening to get at trying to weed out the entitlement mentality. So far, we've had them in 500 different universities. All states except Alaska, right, Debbie? It's Alaska that hasn't had any. I mentioned in the group earlier that a few years ago, a number of our scholars were graduating and having a hard time finding jobs. So we spent quite a bit of time talking to employers in our 4-state area, people who were running businesses in the areas where our kids were getting degrees, and said, what are you looking for? And the feedback was almost universal in every single case. So from that experience, we developed 32 little video vignettes that we make them watch. It's part of the scholarship requirement, is how do you present yourself for an interview? How do you it's free enterprise. It's all the things that mattered to Bill. We also do etiquette with our scholars when they come together. This was something that was so important to Bill. He said people will judge you based on how well you can handle yourself. One of the things that we say a lot in the organization is you never know who you're going to meet, because Bill would talk about sitting next to somebody on a plane and doing $1 million deal with them the next day. So it was kind of fun to do that. So that was which class, Dale? 14? So we're right in the process right now of the next class selection, and we'll probably, instead of 250, select 230 this year. And you may say, if the assets are up, why are you doing that? The formula is that we are last dollar. So when you talk to higher ed folks, if you know what that is, last dollar is after the FAFSA gods, whoever they are, wherever they are, determine how much the family should be able to pay. So our families are very low income families with lots of kids, and the family contribution number has just gone up and up and up. And we've been very concerned about that. So we went into the board last time and said, don't think the big guy would like this. And they said, what do you suggest? So we said, well, it would seem like you could just pay more of the family contribution, but you can't do that. The FAFSA gods won't accept that. So we're now in the process of setting up separate contracts with all these universities to say, we want to cover the family contribution portion, but we want you, university, to take a piece of that action. So we're having great reactions so far, but it's going to be a very, very slow process. So essentially it will look like a full ride at the end of the day, but they'll have a full ride with Pell Grants, any state funding, anything else that they have. Then we have a second scholarship program called the Boundless Opportunity Scholarship. We have a quote from Bill where he talks about America being the land of boundless opportunities for all. So in the Boundless Opportunity Scholarship, the students are not the typical high school to college age. They're adults, they're returning military, they're emergency responders. There are several categories. But we make grants to the universities within our 4 states. They in turn re-grant it for this non-traditional student. We've had 4,300 of those. And those people are more mature, more appreciative. They've had to earn their way a little bit more, and it's one of our favorite things to do. So, grant funding areas. Let me tell you the areas Bill cared about, because there are a lot of them. First is aging, and he adored his mother. His mother was probably the single most important factor in who he became. And he watched her lose her independence and dignity as she aged, as he did. And he said, I want to help seniors age in place with dignity and independence. So we work in the aging area. Alcoholism and substance abuse. Brian mentioned Bill was an alcoholic. He was treated at the Betty Ford Center. He understood the disease very well and understood what the disease does to your companies and your employees and your families. So we do about 75% of the money we do in that area is direct treatment. And the other part is prevention, like youth prevention would be where we would work in that one. Amateur sports. Bill loved sports, period. He owned teams. He played. I mean, Bill was 5'6". I think he thought he was 6'6" because he was right there with the basketball team. But he loved all kinds of sports, and he liked what sports teaches young people. The discipline, the teamwork, all the things that come out of the experience if they're properly coached. So in youth sports, we love Positive Coaching Alliance, who helps coaches and parents know how to behave and do the most for their kids. Disabilities is another area. Bill's sister was developmentally delayed, and so he, at that point in time, when someone had a mental illness, they were kind of put away someplace quietly. No one talked about them. That wasn't the Daniels family way. Dorothy was kept at home, and Mom took care of Dorothy. So Bill observed firsthand the impact it had on Dorothy's life and the impact it had on Mom's life. So he wants to help folks with disabilities have quality of life as well. Early childhood, the one we know the least about from Bill. He didn't really write much about it, but early childhood was there. And how we have interpreted early childhood is that he said, I was fortunate. I grew up in a loving family. Not all kids have that, so I want to help young people have that so they're prepared to enter kindergarten and be ready to succeed. K-12 education. Bill would not like hearing that the United States was number anything but one in anything. So the K-12 system today and the issues that we have today would drive him up a wall. So his direction was, I want education reform. It's not working, folks. He particularly liked charter schools. He liked vouchers. He liked anything that was different because he was such a believer in the free market system. So I think our portfolio of charter schools is probably 20 now. Does that sound about right? That we've helped get started, and we continue to be very interested in that area, and we continue to monitor the performance of those kids in those charters compared to the publics down the street, and we're quite pleased with that. Ethics, no surprise, after the gift he did with the University of Denver, and how many times we'd hear Bill say that his single biggest business asset was his reputation for integrity. So in our ethics area, we sat there for a couple of years and really didn't have many proposals, didn't find anybody who was doing a lot with it. So we went to the board and we said, don't think the big guy would be happy about this. Let's stir this thing up. So we ended up creating what we call the Ethics Initiative. And the Ethics Initiative involves now 11 universities. But we started out with 8 universities to begin with, and we gave them each $250,000 a year for 5 years to say, what is it that we can do that teaches young people, 1, to recognize an ethical dilemma, 2, to slow down and process through a series of values and principles to make a decision. And that has been one of the funnest things we've ever done. It's hard to work with universities, but we've grown to love them all, and we're really doing great things with it. One of the things, first thing they did together was to establish the principles that everyone would agree on and that we would be bound by. Dale's got them up on the screen, but I'll read them for the microphone. Integrity, trust, accountability, transparency, fairness, respect, rule of law, and viability. So after our academic friends came up with these, we took them to our board and said, does this capture our guy? And everybody felt it really did. So it is now the acid test for which we do just about everything. And the second project they did together was a case competition. So we hire an outside case writer to come up with a business case that incorporates an opportunity to practice all these principles. And we have competitions with the universities, and it is just, it's amazing what they're doing. This last year, we added another event that we call the Ethics Summit. And at the Ethics Summit, we had a speaker followed by breakout sessions. And the attendance was 4 students from each university, 4 faculty from each university, and 4 business people from each university. And if they didn't have 4 business people, they couldn't bring 4 of everything else. So we had business people at the table who actually deal with these issues every single day. So the case competition was great. Where we started working today on next year's case competition, and they wanted the subject to be, where are we going as a nation with regard to this? Last year was social media and the challenges involved with social media. So that's our ethics area. And then homeless and disadvantaged. This is one where Bill sort of sent double messages. I can remember driving down the street with Bill when he'd stop at the corner and hand out a $100 bill to a homeless person. And you'd think, Bill, that's not the right way to help them. But that didn't matter to him. He was going to do it. So we do a lot of direct services for people in emergencies, but we also focus heavily on what is going to get them out of that situation to self-sufficiency. As sort of a subcategory of homeless and disadvantaged, we created what we call the Rapid Response Fund, recognizing Bill's what we called drive-by giving. So I remember getting calls at the bank when Bill would read in the newspaper about somebody's house who'd burned down, or someone didn't have enough money to bury a relative or whatever. And he'd call and he'd say, "Did you see that story? Take them $10,000, take them $20,000, anonymous." So we were doing this quite a bit, and I just thought we were the only ones doing it because we were his bank. So when we're working on Bill's estate and we're kind of telling Bill stories, "Oh, he used to call me and tell me," really? So we have no idea how much of this he did, but it was a lot. And there was one letter to all of us that says, don't forget to help people when they need it most. So what we do with the Rapid Response Fund is work with some agencies, because we can't make grants to individuals, but we can work with agencies who deal with individuals every day and turn that money around in 24 hours. We do about $600,000 a year in rapid response across the states. And I think, our board is so proud of most of what we do, but I think that's the one that really touches everybody's heart, because you can just feel Bill when you're doing it. So homeless and disadvantaged, then we have youth development. Youth development is very broad. There are lots of different ways that we approach youth development. We do a lot of mentoring kind of programs. We do a lot of supplemental education programs. We love programs that teach free enterprise. We love programs that teach financial literacy, entrepreneurship, those kinds of things. I think we are probably, and this is Linda, not the foundation's position, I think we are probably a mile wide and an inch deep on this one, and that's something that I think we want to try and get focused on some more. And the 10th area, no surprise, is Young Americans Bank. So every year we do the grant to Young Americans ahead of the losses. They inject the capital and it maintains it. Young Americans now has a separate entity called the Center for Financial Education that operates all of the programs. The community supports the programs, but Bill's commitment was to fund the bank as long as it was legal to have a bank for kids. So that's kind of an interesting approach. A couple of years ago, we started looking around at New Mexico, and we said, New Mexico is a state with an awful lot of needs, and are we really making much of a difference in New Mexico? New Mexico gets 10% of the payout. Wyoming gets 10% of the payout. Utah gets 5%. So are we doing the most we can do with that 10%? So while Bill directed 10%, he did not say you have to be in all 10 areas, or 9 areas. He didn't include that. So we went and spent a lot of time talking to state-level thinkers and said, what's the state's biggest issue? And in New Mexico, poverty was what we heard. Well, the only way to really address poverty long-term is education. So our focus in New Mexico is cradle-to-career educational development. We found one group in southern part of the state that Bill would have absolutely adored. It was a young woman who was president of a manufacturing and machine company, and she would go to El Paso, Texas to hire her employees. So she pulled everybody in one room one day and she said, look, enough. I don't care what's wrong. I don't care whose fault it is. We as a community have a problem. Our kids don't make it to high school. If they make it to high school, they're not equipped to go on to college or to go on to work, and we employers go out of state to hire people. And someone started to say, yeah, but. She said, no, yeah, buts. What are we going to do about it? So fast forward 18 months, on the campus of New Mexico State University, they opened an early college high school where they would rev up the rigor for these kids significantly, and hopefully they would start getting some college credits while they're in high school. So the first class graduated last year, 5 years later. Oh, and then the other thing is they went and found the most average kids that they could find to prove the point that everybody can learn in the right environment. Fast forward 5 years, first graduating class, 100% graduated. 40% of those had one associate degree as well as their high school diploma. 40% of those had 2 associate's degrees. So the business community worked with the schools to say this is the skills we need. Some cases it's high school, some cases it's associate, some cases it's higher ed, and it's working. So we have worked with the state of New Mexico, with Governor Martinez, to replicate that, and we're working on that model now in 10 cities in New Mexico. And then in the state of Utah, we went back a couple years after that and said, how are we doing in Utah? Very different situation than New Mexico. And in Utah, the Mormon Church has a very strong dominance, and the Mormon Church does an enormous amount for the communities. They are very philanthropic. So we wanted to understand what their focus was, what gaps might be, and how we could supplement the situation there. And in Utah, we're actually going to work with the United Way there and target 6 individual neighborhoods and try this deep involvement of all aspects of things in Utah. So we're very excited to see how that's going. Then the other thing that we're working on now is program-related investments. Brian's heard me talk about this one, but the ability to take money out of the investment side of the house, not just the grant side, and look for something that is mission-related but has a market return. So charter school facilities, as an example, is one that we're very intrigued by. Very honestly, we've all been so busy wrapping up end of the year, we haven't put a lot of time into it, but we think that has some potential for us as well. So I don't know how we're doing on time. Getting close? Okay. Challenges facing the Daniels Fund going forward, or facing foundations or nonprofits going forward. Number one is Washington, D.C. We have had conversations now for several years. You're all laughing like that's yours too. We've had conversations for several years about comprehensive tax reform and whether or not charitable gifts are going to be deductible. There seems to be a very strong dislike of foundations like ours, and very strong dislike of donor-advised funds right there now, because they're wanting to force stronger payouts and so on, which in effect gets rid of the perpetuity aspect of the organization. So I serve on Public Policy Committee for 2 national organizations. We talk about this stuff all the time. We go talk to people about it all the time. I don't know if they'll ever get around to doing anything about it, but what they talk about is really scary. Not only is it more payout, but there is a large group of people in Washington who believe that once a donor gives their money to a foundation, that foundation, and that person took a tax deduction, that money now belongs to the public. Therefore, fill in the blank, their name, should decide where the money goes. Well, I think that would curtail future philanthropy out of existence, frankly. Another big issue for us right now is board and CEO turnover. Our board is, they're not young, they're not old, I won't say that, but they're not young. And they love being there. They're the most conscientious directors you would find anywhere in the world. And they prepare and work extremely hard for our meetings. But the reality is that 10, 15 years from now, probably none of us will be there. So how do you groom the next set of directors where they can have the benefit of hearing from all of these people who knew Bill so well and transfer that donor intent and that style? The other thing that is a constant issue for us in every foundation is staffing. Our board talks about we should be more entrepreneurial. Folks, let me tell you, there is nothing entrepreneurial about a foundation. Nothing, which is the hard part for me being in that role. But you have a lot of policies, you have a lot of procedures, you have a lot of this stuff. So who do you want on your staff? How do you find the right people? And you want to make sure that you've got someone who has business sense and can evaluate a nonprofit as a business, and someone who comes in without a personal agenda. Because if they have a personal agenda, they will try and commandeer the fund. So one of the things we did in our donor intent process was we have an agreement that all new board members and all new staff sign that say, I get it, it's not my money. I will check my agenda at the door, and I will do what Bill Daniels wanted done with his dough. The other 2 things that concern us right now, impact. There are over 19,000 nonprofits in Colorado alone, and a large number of those fit within our funding areas. How do we know that we're making a difference in a net sense? So working with Christine and others, we're starting to take a look at a portfolio. What is our aging portfolio collectively do? Are we redundant in some of the things we're funding? And how do we think about some of those areas? It is extremely difficult to sort out who is doing the best and brightest. And then I think the other thing that I would say is a big concern to us is trends and wherever higher ed is going. I mean, the cost of higher ed continues to go up, up, and up. What does that mean for us? I mean, when we do our budget and our forecast, we don't have any idea who the scholars are going to be. We have no idea what school they want to go to, what the tuition is, and the numbers have just gone out of sight.
Well, before I open up questions to the audience, I'd like to ask Linda a few questions. And the first one that I think most people want me to ask is, what did the private investigators find about her boyfriends, right? No. Had to throw that one in there, just in case she got the results. You married a good man in Don,
Yeah.
let me tell you. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what do you believe was Bill Daniels' greatest strength?
Oh, without a doubt, integrity. And his integrity defined the man in everything that he did, and that was the most important characteristic. He had a lot of good characteristics. Drive was huge. He didn't hear a few words like no. He didn't know what that meant. But integrity was the best thing. And he always talked about in the cable business, he wanted to win the deal. There was no question about it. But he wanted his opponent to walk away feeling that it was fair. And he also wanted the industry to constantly be good, because he felt he had to be good within an industry.
That's powerful. Of all the significant accomplishments that Bill achieved in his lifetime, and the fund has achieved subsequent to that, what do you think would be the one that he would be most proud of?
I've actually heard him ask that question and heard his answer. His answer was Young Americans Bank. Now, I would hope today he would say Daniels Fund, but
Linda, this is a question more for you on a personal level. What do you believe is one of the greatest threats or issues facing our country today?
ooh, do I only have one?
We've got to limit you there.
Greatest threat facing our country. Probably the declining work ethic that has defined this country for all these years. You don't see the fire in the belly that people in Bill's generation grew up with. And I think that's one of the things we try and instill in the scholars, is to say you can go get them, you can do it. But I think that's probably, and you can get into a million little things, but that's probably on the biggest level one of my concerns.
With that, let's open it up to the group. Any questions? Yes.
As somebody who knew Bill and worked for him as governor, so you get to know a person very deeply, what they stand for. I want to commend the Daniels Fund. I have seen other funds being left in this state that their direction today is directly counter to everything that their founders believed in. And to follow up on his beliefs and morals and integrity. I know he's watching above and is so proud of you guys.
Thank you, Edie. It's so important. You know, Linda, you and I have had conversations before about this thing called mission creep, and how the funds in the subsequent generations are so far away from the original founders and their belief system. I don't know if you have any chance to read the book Titan about Rockefeller, and you look at how things went so far askew from what he believed in to what the kids inherited. It's quite sad. Another question, Nicole?
Yes, you mentioned about the Daniels Scholarship Fund, and except for Alaska. Is there any pinpoint of why not?
Nope.
Alaska? Nope.
Nope, they can go any university they want, they've just not chosen Alaska. So.
Okay.
We just thought you had something against Alaska there for a second, so
I love Alaska.
we had to clarify that. Brian, you have a question?
Just to reiterate a story about Bill Daniels, I work for a broadcast group. We own multiple CBS affiliates, and we went into negotiations with Bill in Denver, and we had a real list of things that we wanted done, and I think we got like out of maybe 21 of them from Bill, and we really got our heads handed to us. But I remember our CEO saying, boy, it really felt good. He's a nice guy.
When you can walk away from a negotiation like that and still think he's a good guy, he's doing something right. That's pretty talented. Other questions? Yes.
Quick first thank you, Mike Pritchard with Goodwill, and Linda, thanks for all Daniels Fund does for so many nonprofits. Could you tell one brief story, one youth maybe that came through a scholarship program and what they're doing today?
So let me just repeat that so everybody can hear it. Mike is the CFO of Goodwill Industries, and his question is that could you share one story of a particular example of that was a positive one in a big way?
Great. Well, the first one that comes to my mind is Dominic Moreno, who is now a state legislator. Dominic was a Daniels Scholar, and he went to Georgetown and got interested in making a difference politically, came back from school, ran for city council in Commerce City, and won. 21-year-old, no experience, won. And he immediately became a leader of committees, and people respected him, and first thing he knew, he became mayor pro tem. So then he runs for the House, and now he is in a leadership position in the House as well, and he's a different party than Bill was, but Bill would be thrilled for this kid because of the initiative that he took and how hard he works at it. So Dominic would be the one that comes to my mind first. We could tell you stories all day, though. So
Next. Yes. Sorry.
It's abundantly transparent that his passion for influencing others and helping others was much higher than making money. And what I was hoping you could share with us is how can we do the same to share that with the youth?
So the question, while you're getting ready to answer that, is his passion was much beyond just making money. It was about having an impact specifically with the youth, and how can each of us share in that?
You know, I'd love to say that was his motivation from beginning, but I don't think it was. I think in the beginning, he joined the military because he could make $187 a week. I think his original drive and passion was to make money. And he was so good at it that he suddenly said, now what am I going to do with it? So I think Bill would say to you, and he commissioned studies about the cable industry to show the economic impact or the good that comes from an industry, the people that are employed by it, all the other businesses that are affected by it. So he looked at his business and his philanthropy as making a difference, and he felt like he had to have the money first to be able to do what he's doing now. So does that answer your question? Not really.
I think learning about him tonight is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the way that he conducted himself and how he extended his influence is powerful. So thank you very much.
Well, one thing I'd like just to add to that, a lot of business owners I know, they're one and the same. You know, yes, they like making money and being successful, but they're givers of their time, talent, and treasure all along the way. I think oftentimes there's this fallacy in society that when I make X or Y, well, then I can go ahead and give. Well, you don't know if you're ever going to live that long to make X or Y, or if you're ever going to do it. And you have an opportunity to impact a life on a positive basis right here, right now. And it's not just about money. It's about being nice to someone and just loving on them. So, Purnima?
My question is simple. My daughter did go to Daniels College and did her double master's. I'm very proud of her. When did Bill Daniels go to rehabilitation, and when did he stop that alcohol? What age?
Well, in 1985 at 65-ish. Yeah.
Dale's my fact checker here. 1985 at age 65? Yeah.
I was thinking much younger because he sobered up and then he made all this money. And
He talked a lot about the quality of life that he began to enjoy once he'd gotten sober. And I think the environment of cable at that time involved a lot of receptions and entertaining, and there was a lot of alcohol, and that was just kind of the way business was then in some ways. And once he got sober and realized how much better he felt and how much brighter he was, he really made money then.
It's amazing how we can make money when we're all sober, right? At the end of the day. Is anybody sober here tonight? No, just kidding. Shari, you have a question in the back, and I'll get to you, Jill.
Shari Williams, Leadership Program in the Rockies, and I do want to commend the Daniels Fund because I think you are one of the most innovative entrepreneurial groups out there. What advice would you have? Because so many people in public policy were limited by the structure of nonprofits. Any advice you'd have on how to be more entrepreneurial in public policy?
The question is, how can one become more entrepreneurial under the structure of public policy?
Very timely question, Shari. We talked about this last Friday in our shop. As we talked about aging in particular, we said, should we be doing more to advocate for seniors? I mean, the Medicare, Medicaid kinds of things. One of the things we've become aware of is that they don't cover dentures. So here's a person suffering from all kinds of dental disease, and nothing is covered. So we're trying to figure that out as well. We have been very careful not to get into it, honestly. I mean, we've had a pretty bright line where we drew the line, but I think we're looking at that now a little bit differently and saying, what can we do and still be completely legal, and what would Bill want us to do on some of these issues? I wish I had an answer.
We're going to finish up with two questions. Jill, you had one?
Jill Rapella, Douglas County Commissioner. Thank you. I very much appreciated your talk. If Bill were standing here today, what would be his biggest heartburn? And I'm going to narrow it down to the state of Colorado. And what would he be wanting to focus all of the passion into today, right now?
So Jill Rapella, she ran for lieutenant governor. It's great to see you again, Jill. Her question, if Bill was standing here today, what would be his biggest heartburn about our state, and where would he want to put all his resources to get behind it and make a change?
I think fracking.
Yeah, really?
Yep.
Can you elaborate?
I think he would see that as a brand new industry that would be good for the state, would be good for the country, would be innovative. I just think that he would go for that and go for that in a big way.
We're actually going to have someone speaking about fracking pretty soon at the Opportunity Coalition. Yes?
So my question is, what would his daughter have us do?
You're talking about me?
Yes.
Yes. So what would his daughter have us do, his adopted daughter?
His adopted daughter. I think when Bill would speak to audiences, he always ended the same way. He would always say, this is a good-looking audience. You all look healthy, you all look well-fed, you all look comfortable. The world isn't that way for everybody. Make a difference, go out and help somebody who's not as fortunate as you are. So I think sometimes we can live in a bubble and we really don't know all the challenges that some folks are having unless you work in Goodwill or organizations like that. You don't necessarily even see the struggles that some people have. The favorite part of my job is to be able to go visit with our grantees and see the work that's being done on the ground to help people. So would be pick your cause and do something with it.
Great. One more? Just because you're nice about it. Okay. Yes, Nicole.
Okay, obviously you have done such an amazing job honoring Bill Daniels, his vision, his quest. Is there anything outside of what he had that you would want to leave a legacy, just specifically you? I mean, obviously you have left a legacy just honoring him. Is there anything else to add?
So Nicole's question is,
that you want to leave?
What legacy would Linda like to leave?
It would probably be education and the scholarship program as well. Bill's mother was very proper, and she loved the arts, and she loved the ballet and all these things. And Bill said to us, don't buy any damn opera tickets with my money. He'd had enough of them. So sometimes I am sorry we're not in the arts a little bit more, because I think it is important to a community. But if it were my money and my billion, it would be scholarships.
Linda, can I answer that question for you? Because I have one thing to say. This contribution that Linda's made about locking down donor intent and protecting the intent of the donor cannot be underestimated. And Linda is a leader in the nation for that. She just won't tell you that, but she has rocked it on that. And so she's been a national example for helping industries, this industry particularly, honor donor intent in a way that set an example and is really creating momentum, and it cannot be overstated how important that is. Also, there's about, how many of us kids?
14.
14 kids from all walks of life that Linda has taken under her wing, from the oldest, which is me, to younger and more let's just say, flexible kids that she's taken under her wing and taught us about life, mentored us, brought us opportunity, and she continues to gather the family, and it's been a tremendous impact on all of us.
that good?
Thank you. That's great. Great job. This is the smallest microphone I've ever had. I feel like I need to put my finger out like this. Okay. So if I do that, just, okay. With each speaker that we have, I like to pull out golden nuggets of wisdom, because sometimes they're overlooked. Linda said that the importance of teaching financial literacy to our youth. So important. Find a child and talk to them about financial literacy. Start with your own kids, maybe. They're not too young. If you don't have expertise in something, hire the best people you can find. Bill Daniels liked what sports taught young people if coached properly, and I think that's an important one. He didn't want to see the United States of America in any other position except for number one. How often have we settled for second or third or fifth? Or look at our education system. Is that acceptable? Not to Bill Daniels. And one of the ones that I love the most is that we all loved the man. Think about that from a leadership perspective, long after someone has passed. They all loved the man, and they're fulfilling his legacy. Upcoming in the Opportunity Coalition, I wanted to share who some of our speakers will be. On February 19th, we're honored to have Doug Jackson, CEO of Project Cure. If you don't know about Project Cure, it's a phenomenal organization right in our own backyard, and they're impacting many lives around the world. On March 19th, we're going to have a Q&A panel of the women to watch in Colorado. I'd like to change that a little bit and call it the women to learn from and to emulate in Colorado. Linda will be coming back for that one, but no. On that panel, we're going to have Debbie Brown, Tamara Ward with Colorado Concern, Beth Boland, who's the director of the Broncos, and Heidi Ganal, who is the founder of Camp Bow Wow. If you don't know about Camp Bow Wow, pretty exciting business right in our own backyard that was founded and has a phenomenal impact around the country. On April 16th, we're going to have Chris Wright, CEO of Liberty Resources. Chris is on the cutting edge of fracking and is a renowned speaker on that subject. So come and learn about it instead of just getting educated on the sound bites, and be ready to ask him some tough questions. On May 14th, we have Susan Morris. Susan she has a great story. She believed that there was oil in this country called Belize, and everyone told her, no way. And Susan, that just made her want to do it even more. And so she spent years looking for oil, and she found it in Belize. And through that process has helped transform their healthcare system and a host of other things. She's a great Irish woman, and she's one you want to learn from. So with that, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. We invite you to reach out to your friends and tell them about the Opportunity Coalition. If you have any speakers that you think that would be good to host here, we'd be honored to have them. I also do a podcast twice a week with people of interest from around the world. In 30 minutes or less on your way to work, you can listen to these podcasts and just get in the minds of some great, great people. So if you have anyone you think that I should interview, please let me know. I also, before we close, want to acknowledge Vic Ahmed. He's one of the advisory board members. He's also the founder of the Innovation Pavilion and is just a great, great entrepreneur. So make sure you say hi to Vic on the way out. Again, thank you all for being here tonight.